Hello everyone. If you saw my last video, I talked about a 3-volume set that I really wanted, that I had seen at a local bookstore. That set was 3 volumes of the collected poetry of Robinson Jeffers, and I did not buy it. I told myself when I saw the set that I had already bought too many books that week, that I didn't have any right to the collected poetry of a poet who I thought I was interested in but hadn't genuinely spent a lot of time with. And I told myself that it would be there next time I went back. So instead I bought a smaller volume of his work, and I said I would read it the following week, go back, and buy the pieces if they were still there. And if they weren't there, then they weren't meant to be mine. Well, of course they weren't there. I don't know if I'll get the chance again to buy them in the wild. I don't know where they ended up. The only way you can guarantee that a book you like ends up in a good place is to give it one. So after that experience, as a consolation, I've been buying all kinds of things. So I'm going to share those with you and remind myself in the process that there are lots of wonderful things that I do have. I'm going to start out with the other Robinson Jeffers volumes that I got, and I should read you something so you know what the fuss is about. Robinson Jeffers was writing during the modernist period. He's a little bit different than a lot of his other contemporaries. I don't think he exactly fits into the canon of modernism as it is usually taught. I think a lot of people who respect him today respect him for the environmental qualities of his work, his vision for the relationship between humans and nature. I like him, as I suspected from my previous encounters with him, and from the bits of reading I've done since seeing those volumes, that there is something in his language, in the power and intensity of his poetry, that really gets me. But the other reason is that he's a California poet, and I am born and raised in California, and the literary voices, especially the literary voices who are connected with California's landscape and with its nature and natural scenery, are always going to be nostalgic and delightful for me to read. This is a little snippet that I found touching from one of his long poems, Thurso's Landing, which is an epic poem about cowboys on the California coast, living in Big Sur. A curl of sea cloud stood on the head of the hill, like a wave breaking against the wind, but when they reached it, windows of clearness in it were passing from the northwest, through which the mountain seawall looked abrupt as dreams, from Lobos like a hand on the sea, to the offshore giant at Point Sur southward. Straight down through the coursing mists, like a crack in the mountain sea root, Mill Creek Canyon, like a crack in the naked root of a dead pine when the bark peels off. The bottom of the fissure was black with redwood, and lower green with alders. Between the black and the green, the painted roof of the farmhouse, like a dropped seed, Thurso's house, like a grain of corn in the crack of a plank, where the hens can't reach it. They had tied the horses to the highest bushes on the north slope, and walked on the open dome of the hill. They crossed it, and the east was clear. The beautiful, desolate, inhuman, range beyond range of summits all seen at once, dry, bright, and quiet, and their huge blue shadows. That portion that he's describing at the end, the range of summits of blue shadows, has been a piece of my natural background for as long as I can remember. Like a second horizon of varying shape, of a constant blue color. And the way he describes it to me is touching and powerful and stilling all at once. And I wish I had more of his poetry, but I will buy it piece by piece as I see it. This volume, I think, is 2 of his volumes put into one, Thurso's Landing and Dear Judas, which to me it looks like they've been jammed together and badly rebound. This is probably what they were meant to look like. This is a much prettier volume, The Women at Point Sur. And then this is probably the most accessible volume of his. It's a little paperback of selected short poems, and I think maybe one longer poem. The unfortunate thing with collecting his work piecemeal like this is apparently there are a lot of textual errors, as different editors have made punctuation changes to his work, as well as a lot of suppressed poems that never made it to publication, that would be included in those collected volumes of his work. Either way, it's a good start. I'll read these, and I'll be patient. These next 3 books taught me another lesson, which is that you should dig around the religious section of thrift stores in particular, because they don't always know how to categorize books. This is a collection of poetry of St. John of the Cross, who I didn't know about beforehand, but this caught my eye, particularly with the subtitle Alchemist of the Soul. I thought it'd be some weird mysticism, but no, he is a very important figure in the development of Spanish poetry. He was a 16th century poet who wrote really touching, deep religious poetry. From my brief time flipping through here, it seems to be quite in the vein of what the metaphysical poets were doing in England. I think the metaphysical poets are a little bit later than him, but he shares the qualities I like about them, a deep spiritual feeling combined with a deep amount of religious thought. And although the original poetry is in Spanish, so I'll be reading a translation, a degree of poetic complexity that can tie it all together. So I'm really excited to read this. This is maybe one that would belong in the poetry section. This is Love Lyrics from the Bible by Marcia Falk, and this is a translation of the poems in the Song of Solomon. Unfortunately, pages are coming out. And this, like the last, is bilingual, although I don't think I have any hope of reading the Hebrew for a long time. I think this is supposed to be like a literary translation and a literary study of the actual poetic forms, but I bought it largely because the poetry was beautiful. Anytime I see a unique translation of the Bible, especially if it's from a single person, if it's a deep study of a particular book, like I'll pick it up and flip through it. But some of those translations are stiff as a board, especially ones that are of biblical poetry. I think I've found so many translations of the Psalms that just don't seem pleasant to read, whereas this was lovely. The pieces that I looked at seem elegant, they seem to flow very naturally. They seem to be charged with an emotional depth that sometimes gets removed when you're doing a scholarly translation. So this is just wonderful. And then this is The Powers of Prophecy by Robert Lerner. And this is one I almost passed up, because what happens in thrift stores, especially the religious section of thrift stores, is they get packed with outdated, expired mysticism, and also old like factory Christian writing that isn't in vogue anymore, so no one's reading it. Those tend to fill up the shelves of a thrift store religious section. And with the title of this one, I didn't have high hopes, but I did grab it and look at it and realized that no, this is a scholarly study. This is a scholarly study of medieval eschatological prophecy that does it through a very specific prophecy, the Cedar of Lebanon vision. And it traces the history of that prophecy and talks about the cultural effect that this type of prophecy had in the Middle Ages and going forward. Pretty cool. Now we're getting into miscellaneous titles that I just picked up. This is from the Britannica Great Book series. I don't usually get these in stores because they look kind of funky on a shelf. They all kind of want to be together rather than letting you arrange chronologically. But I will get them when they are convenient, and some volumes are just convenient. This is a very small amount of shelf space to have all of the major Greek dramatists. This is the plays of Aeschylus, Sophocles, Euripides, and Aristophanes, and I think it's complete. I think it has all of their plays. I'd have to check on that. I know it at least has all of Sophocles. And that's a hard thing to find, because you almost only ever see the 3 Theban plays, the Oedipus plays. This is Shakespeare's Suspect Texts by Laurie E. Maguire, which is about, I think it's about Shakespeare manuscript variations different versions of the plays we have that are not the authorized folio of Shakespeare plays. And I think it's discussing various theories about those, whether they are bad copies or earlier versions, which is definitely an interesting topic. The volume to me looks weird. This is a university press. This is Cambridge. But the hardcover feels a little cheap to me, and I looked it up, and I think it's a different shade of purple. So I'm not sure where this came from. I buy a lot of academic books when I find them, if they're on a topic I like, and generally I enjoy reading them, but I think this one may be a little out of my depth. I was looking through it, and it looks incredibly dense. It looks like one of those books that you may need like 3 other books to reference as you're reading it to make sense of it. But I guess we'll find out when I'm in a Shakespeare mood. This is Milton, Paradise Lost. I just read Paradise Lost. I'll read it again. But this book I got for 2 reasons. One is it has an introduction by Northrop Frye, which sounds neat. Sounds like a more interesting introduction than the one I read. And then the cover just feels really good. I don't know what this is. It's some kind of clothy feel, but it feels really nice and it looks pretty. The Nibelungenlied by Modern Library? No, Everyman's Library. Yeah, okay. This is the German epic poem. It's not as old as other epic poems. I think it's from like very early medieval period, but during the Romantic period, the Germans all held this up and said that this was their Iliad. I've been meaning to read it for a while. I think I have it maybe in another translation. And unfortunately, this is another prose translation. I don't know if I have it in verse anywhere. At some point soon, I'll do a review of what I have and read it maybe in a couple different translations. This is another book I bought because it's convenient. This is the complete works of Shakespeare. This is in that Classics Club line. I see these relatively often. Sometimes I see them with people charging like ludicrous prices for them. You shouldn't pay a lot for these books. They're everywhere. But if you see one for a couple bucks and it's something convenient like this, a 1-volume set of all of Shakespeare's plays, I think that's pretty worth it. This volume is a little grimy, but it's from the 30s, so I will forgive it. And then last is this monster of a thing. This is English Prose of the Victorian Era, an Oxford publication. From 1938, selections chosen by Charles Harold and William Templeman. This is nice because it has a lot of pieces from people I want to read. Thomas Carlyle, Matthew Arnold, Ruskin. There's even a William Morris piece in here. This is a little intimidating. It's a big book. But either I'll take it piecemeal or I will sit down and do a disciplined read of all my Victorians, like I'm doing now for my Romans. That is everything for now. Please tell me if you have any similar stories where there's a book that you regret not buying. Did you ever find it again? Is there hope for me? Thanks. See you all next time.